Welcome, everybody. We are here for another session of Men's Healing Matters. My name is Greg Mayo. I am the Men's Healing Strategist here at Support After Abortion. Men's Healing Matters is a monthly webinar that talks about healing strategies to reach men and to effectively help men. This week's session is called Engaging Men Quickly and Effectively. Last month, we talked about the male volunteer. We talked about why men don't volunteer. We shared some ideas about why they don't volunteer, things like they haven't really thought of it, that it was too hard to get started, that men tend to prioritize work, that they don't think they have anything to offer, those kind of ideas. We also talked about how to appeal to a male volunteer and to get him to stay. And we talked about 10 different items that we could do to recruit men and to get them to stay engaged in our mission and in our. Then we talked about what ideal qualities for a male volunteer might look like, about not throwing spaghetti on the wall and hoping it sticks and just using anybody. But really, what was that ideal man? What qualities did he have? We talked about consistency and ability to truly listen and curiosity. We also talked about tailoring a volunteer process that would resonate with men, how that might be a little bit different than it is for women. And that's okay. We talked about clear objectives for men and getting them active quick. And then we talked about where we can find provider training resources. And a quick reminder that in our provider training center, you can see a replay and a recap of last month's Men's Healing Matters as well as previous month. I encourage you to go take a look at those when you have an opportunity. So this month, as we talk about engaging men quickly and effectively, we have to talk about what we're missing. We have to talk about men and mental health. So we're going to get into a little bit of context first. John Steinbeck once wrote, "A sad soul can be just as lethal as a germ." Many men struggle with a lot of different things that we're going to talk about, and those lead to their seemingly aversion to mental health opportunities. So what are we missing? In an article published this year by the Association of American Medical Colleges titled "Men and Mental Health, What Are We Missing?" talked about some pretty startling statistics. First of all, the suicide rate among men is 4 times higher than it is among women. There's a lot of factors for that, but it's important to note. If you do a web search, you're going to find that most of the stats for men and mental health center around depression and suicide rates. The other thing that the article talked about was how society often blames men for themselves. What do I mean by that? It goes on to talk about how society in this day and age blame men for men's problems. So you're feeling depressed, it's your own fault. If you're lonely, it's your own fault. Go find a mate. All these different questions, right? And what they come back over and over again in the modern lexicon is that if you're a man and you're having problems, it's your fault. That's a damaging message, and a message that keeps men from seeking the help that they need. Dr. Derek Griffith wrote, "Men aren't the problem. The way we, as a society and healthcare providers specifically, treat them is." This is a really important statement. I think back to my early years in therapy in the 90s when I was seeing a therapist, and my issues were treated what I thought were a very ineffective way. I was talked to and tried to get to communicate and relate to my therapist as though I were a woman and felt like a woman. And so a lot of things just didn't resonate. So that's an important distinction. He goes on to say, by the way, that men often feel that providers mislabel and underestimate their needs, and that providers don't seem to have a genuine interest in what their real problems are. Now, as my dad used to say, if one person called you a duck, you'd think they're crazy. But if enough people call you a duck, you start looking for a bill and flippers. We hear this over and over again from men. And so at some point, it has to become a problem that we're willing to address, that we're willing to deal with. Confucius said, "Balance is a perfect state of still water." Let that be our model. It remains quiet within and it is not disturbed on the surface. Now, you may be wondering, why would I stick a Confucius quote in here, right? Number one, the quote means a lot to me. It's actually up in my wood shop here at the house. It's a good reminder how we're supposed to be. Unfortunately, what a lot of men do is they figure out a way to maintain that still water on the surface, but underneath is a churning mess, right? And so when I look at that quote and I think about balance, that's what I think about, how most men are out of balance. We've learned how to put on the show to make it look a certain way when it's not. But the other thing to be aware of is that balance is really hard for many men. So let's talk a little bit about men's perception of mental health care. The NIH did a meta-analysis of 9 different studies. And what they found was that men are significantly less likely to seek mental health care than women. They also found that over 70% of suicides in the US are men. Every 20 minutes in the United States, another man takes his own life. This is significant, and to me, it's a startling thing. I talk to a lot of guys. I've talked to guys my whole life in the context of recovery, healing, mental health stuff, right? I can tell you from talking to men over and over that the level of despair and depression among men is significant, and these stats just bear that out. The other challenge, as far as men's perception of mental health, is that men tend to focus outward. They want to fix something. According to the Walker Center, who produced an article called Why Men Are Less Likely to Get Mental Health, women focus inward when dealing with a mental health issue or challenge. They look inward to their emotions and to their behaviors. Men look outward. They want something to fix, right? And that's a very guy thing to say. I got to go fix something. If you're a man and you've been married, or you're a woman and you've been married to a man, you understand that dynamic in conversation, right? The woman often, and it is often the case in my relationship too, wants to share their feelings. And sometimes it's just to get the feelings out. It's just to know that they've been heard. Men, on the other hand, want to fix it. They see a problem. So what's the problem? What solution can I bring? And men do that to their own mental health issues too. The other thing that the study found was that men often act out instead of sharing their emotions. They act out through, according to the study, alcoholism, substance abuse, workaholism, increased romantic partners through risk-taking behaviors, driving fast, skydiving, cliff jumping, whatever the case may be. The idea is they have these emotions, they don't know what to do with them, they don't have a healthy mechanism for handling them or processing them, and so they act out in some other kind of behavior. Now, these behaviors can provide one of 2 benefits. I say benefits. One is either to mask the pain in the issue, or the second one can be to just feel something. Those might seem like counterintuitive ideas, but given the situation, the circumstance, and the emotion they're dealing with or not dealing with in this case, both are equally valid as far as why that acting out mechanism comes forth. But when you funnel them all down, it's really just about trying to deal with root problems without dealing with the root problems. The other thing is that men seeking healthcare is often stigmatized. The expectation for men is that they are a pillar of strength and that they are support for those around. Now, I would suggest that men are supposed to be strong for those around and support those around, their family, their close friends, their kids, their spouse, those kind of things. But no one can pour from an empty cup. And that's where the disconnect is. Men are often pouring from an empty cup. The other thing that goes along with that, and this just came up this morning, but I'm involved with a couple different men's groups on social media. And in one of the groups, somebody posted, why do men come on here and talk about their feelings and problems? I say man up. And then he went on this long shtick about it. Now think about that for a minute. A men's group exists to support, to encourage one another, to help another work through issues, right? The iron sharpens iron thing. So does one man sharpen another. And yet this guy's answer to other guys sharing their struggles and looking for advice, input, prayer, all that kind of thing was that men should man up. So when we talk about seeking mental health is stigmatized, it ain't going away anytime soon, gang, but we can do something about it. Now I want to shift gears a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about what you may not know about men and mental health. The first thing I want to share is that the deterrent to men seeking therapy is not toxic masculinity. An article by the Center for Male Psychology called You Can't Help Men by Attacking Masculinity may hold some keys to understanding what we think we know and what we don't know about men and mental health. What are we talking about? First of all, violence and sexism are rooted in past trauma, not in masculinity. What I mean by that, who grows into a man, his natural propensity to do things a certain way, to be more physical, more aggressive, all these kind of things. Those aren't inherently bad things. The trauma is an inherently bad thing. So when we do a study of prisoners, we find that most men that are incarcerated for violent crimes or sexual aggression or whatever, that they had experienced the same as children. That doesn't excuse it. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying it's not masculinity, it's trauma. Here's some other interesting information about men and masculinity. In today's society, things have changed greatly for boys. 43% of boys are raised by single moms. 78% of teachers are women. So when we put that together, what we see is that close to half of all boys have 100% female influence at home and 80% female influence at school. So what's the point? The point is there are no men teaching young men how to live and feel like a man. I entered healing at 16 years old, Alateen. Many of you know my story, but that wasn't the norm. When my dad said, after having been sober at that point for almost 10 years, that his excessive drinking and alcohol misuse might have impacted me and that Alateen might help me work through some of those issues, that wasn't normal. That wasn't what was common. But I'm very thankful for it nonetheless. And the other thing I want to tie into this with regard to masculinity and the idea of toxic masculinity, the Duluth model. It's a program based on the idea that all domestic violence is caused by the patriarchy and toxic masculinity. And yet, a meta-analysis found that this program and others with the same model are less than 50% effective or have less than 50% success rate. Meaning, we take men who have been convicted of domestic violence or some other kind of aggressive violence, and we put them in a program to treat them, but the program's not treating the root, which is the trauma. But men feel that their masculinity is attacked. With that context, men want help, but many men believe nobody cares. And that's a huge problem. I want to share some verbatims with guys I work with who have given me permission without sharing their name to share what they said. So here are some of what men have told me. If a man is suffering, then women will see him as weak, as a weak partner, and will avoid him. I'll never get married if a woman finds out I have pain. Another guy said, help? Who would help? No one gives a blank what I'm going through. How do I know? Because I'm a man, that's how I know. Another guy said, hey, look, as long as I'm providing, that's all that matters. My junk is my own. And the last guy I want to share, he said, it seems like every time I try to talk to someone, my feelings end up being my problem. And then their response to my feelings ends up being my problem. It's like, why do that to myself? I'll just keep quiet. So we can see by what we've shared at this point, men want help. Men are told they don't need help. Men are told they shouldn't want help. Men are told they're weak if they want help, perhaps. But we know men want help. Men are crying out. One of the ways we have to work to reach them is about messaging. We've talked about this before a little bit, and I want to talk about it a little bit more now. We have to change our ads, our social media posts, our literature. Look at social media when we're talking about men's issues. The coloring, the pictures, the verbiage, it's all geared toward resonating with men. And that's what we have to do. Now, that doesn't mean we do that in exclusion of women's efforts to market and to contact and to draw them in. It just means we have to have a separate campaign, a separate look and feel that resonates with men and how men think and talk and receive information. The chief executive of the American Psychological Association, Arthur Evans, was quoted as saying, there is clearly a growing recognition that we have to reframe mental health care in our approach to addressing the mental health needs of men. Now, this is huge. He goes on to say, for instance, reframing therapy as an opportunity to become strong and well rather than a treatment for mental illness. This is a huge thing. When you go to a man and you say, you seem sad. I know a guy that can help. You lost him. You lost him already. We don't receive information like that. Whereas my wife said, if a friend of mine said that to me, I would think, oh, she cares. Maybe I'll go talk to this person. Guys typically don't receive it that way. The paradox here is we have to talk about the double jeopardy man. That's a phrase coined by Dr. Sally Spencer Thomas, who is the president and co-founder of United Suicide Survivors International. And she calls a group of men the double jeopardy men. These men have a number of risk factors: depression, anxiety, job loss, PTSD, whatever, but they are also the least likely to seek help on their own. She quoted a man in her study who said, and I love this guy's honesty and wording. He said, that message you mental health people put out there, first of all, the opening, the message that you mental health people put out there, if you're depressed, seek help. He said, yeah, that misses on both counts. So we can't say to a man, if you're sad, find somebody to talk to. If you're depressed, seek help. Because he's right. That doesn't resonate with men. What does resonate with men? There's a group I found online called menliving.org. Now, I don't know a great deal about them. I read over their website, doing research for today. But what I found was interesting was how they put themselves forward on the website. They state their mission is to create spaces where men can connect, heal, and thrive. Many men today are longing for some kind of connection. So they open up with that: connect, heal, thrive. That's important. The other thing is the website says, again, on the main page, above the fold, if you're an old newspaper guy like I am, we have no requirements, no creeds, no gurus, no judgment. All you have to do is show up. Why is this message so important that way? Because if you get a guy to show up to a group and the first thing you do is hand him a 27-question form on a clipboard, you lost him. He doesn't need a guru. He doesn't need someone telling him what to do. He deals with that at work. He deals with that in other aspects of his life. He doesn't need a list of requirements that he's got to meet to join the group. And the most important thing is he doesn't need judgment. He just needs somewhere he can show up to and then talk about in how and when it feels natural and right for him. That's what he needs. And that's what that group provides. And I find it fascinating. I found another group called mentherapy.online. The first page is bright colors and all these things. And it says, face your demons. Be the hero of your own story. We could look at a dozen other groups, right? Iron sharpens iron. I've spoken at a couple of their events over the years, and their live events are very masculine. The food they serve is very masculine. The imagery, the signage, the things on stage behind the speakers when you're up there, it's all very man driven. And I'll tell you something about those groups. They get a lot done. They get a lot of men coming forward. They get a lot of men talking and feeling and opening up. And it's not because they said, how are you feeling? Would you like to talk about it? Necessarily. It's because the men are encouraged to rise to something better, to face your demons, to be the hero of your own story. So I'm fine. You guys can hear me, right? I went to the doctor this morning. I have bronchitis, a sinus infection, and fluid in both ears. When I walked through the door of my house, my youngest son's here, and he said, hey, how you doing today, Pop? I said, I'm fine. Now I'm laughing because that's just the pad guy response, right? I'm fine. I'm okay. You bump into a guy at work or at church. Hey, how you doing today, brother? I'm good. I'm all right. I'm fine. I saw a men's mental health page on Instagram, and the guy doing the presentation said, let me assure you, when a man says I'm fine, he's anything but. There's truth to that. We're going to talk about an article by the Jefferson Center called I'm Fine. We're going to talk about when a man comes into your center or your building, or when a man comes in, we all know we have very limited time to get them to talk, right? We have very limited time in a very small window to get them to open up at all. Now, that is true whether the man is abortion minded or has experienced abortion. If he's there, we can assume a few things. There's a fair to middling chance he's not there because he chose to come. He may be there with his girlfriend, fiance, spouse, wife, partner, whatever. He may be there because he wasn't sure what else to do. He may be there because someone directed him to go there, but he's not sure what's going to happen. Either way, whatever the case may be, we've got a very small window of opportunity to engage this guy and to get him talking. So in this article, I'm fine. It talks about 5 different ways to engage men in a very short period of time to hopefully make an impact and open them up to what might be next as a possibility for choosing life with this partner or to choosing healing if he's already experienced loss. So let's go through these 5 steps. First one, make an observation. Hey, my name's Greg. Thanks for coming into the center today. Nice to meet you. And he'll say, my name's Bob. How you doing today, Bob? That's a thing we would logically ask somebody we just met. How you doing? Nice to meet you. Whatever. I'm fine. So if he's there, but he doesn't appear to be willing to open up. Now, this requires us to do what we talked about in March, which being a good listener, and that means with our eyes and our ears, right? Watching, reading body signals, nonverbals. So we make an observation. Oh, Bob, it's nice to meet you. You seem a little tired today. You good? Observation is different than just a question. And why is it different? Because what you're telling him is, I see something in you. I see something right now. You look tired, man. He's abortion minded and in your pregnancy center with his significant other, and she's getting an ultrasound and it was an unplanned pregnancy and all these different factors. He probably is tired, probably high anxiety and exhausted. So just a simple question. Hey man, you seem a little tired today. You good? Now that's my parlance. You good? Y'all may not talk like that. Ask the question however you would ask. The point is make an observation and then open the door with a little question to give him the opportunity to speak. Another thing you say, man, that chair doesn't look real comfortable at all. We can move somewhere else if you want to. Now, let me explain the chair thing. And I've done this with many men in different recovery groups, this exact scenario. That chair doesn't look real comfortable. You want to move? Why does that work? What is it about that? My wife will tell you, and in fact, all my friends' wives will tell you, when a man's in a public space, a space he doesn't know, and you sit him in a room, the first thing he's looking for is where's the exit? Now, you brought him into this room. There's one exit, say it's in a small conference room or whatever you have at your center, and you're sitting between him and the exit. That's problem number one. The only exit is behind you. The other thing is what's behind him. Is it open windows? Is it a door to the outside? Is it an open room where people are walking behind him? That's going to cause some discomfort. There's a lot of reason, and simply by virtue of the fact that he's in somewhere he's not familiar with. He doesn't know the environment. When I started doing virtual healing groups, facilitating them a couple, 3 years ago, I remember telling a friend of mine, I don't think this is going to work. Now, that was my own ignorance and myopathy, right? Because I had spent my entire life involved in participating in and facilitating men's groups and other groups in person. I didn't think virtual would work, but it did work. And in a lot of cases, it worked better. And why? And this is my tie into the chair thing. It worked better because, like right now, where I'm sitting, and I don't know where you're all at, you all are at, but I'm sitting in my home office. I have my guitars over my shoulder. I have an antique secretary desk that had belonged to my father before he passed sitting in front of me. I have my books over there. I am comfortable in my space. I got my water. It's my space. When he's in your center, he's already uncomfortable and he's not in his space. He's in your space. He'll be mindful of that. The chair thing works, man. And it works for those reasons and maybe more. The other thing is share your experience. Now, a lot of people get hung up on this. I talk to a lot of male volunteers and truly am thankful that more men are stepping into the volunteer role in pregnancy centers and other facilities. than we had when I entered healing for my abortion loss 15 years ago. But the men get hung up on, I really feel called to volunteer here, but I don't have an abortion experience. That's okay. That's okay. Share your experience. For a good example would be, hey man, I get being unsure about a big decision. I've been there. If somebody comes in and they're looking for abortion healing, man, I understand loss. I understand grief. You don't go on a 22-minute testimonial, but sharing that you can relate, sharing just a little bit of your experience so they know they're not alone. What do we talk about? One of the biggest problems for men is they feel alone. Nobody understands what I'm going through. Nobody's been through what I'm going through. Nobody can relate to what I'm going through. That's what keeps men in isolation after abortion law 10, 20, 30, some 40 years. They feel like they're alone. Sharing your experience, even just a little bit, is enough to make him feel comfortable that, hey, you know what? I can talk about this. The other thing is walk and talk. The idea is to get up and get moving. I get in some places that may not be as easy as others, and some places it may be a little less advisable. But by and large, the get up and walk and talk is a really good thing. And it's real easy. You don't say, so Bob, I know we just met. Would you like to take a nice long walk on the beach? But to say something like, and I could use some fresh air. You want to go walk outside and have a chat? Or, man, it's really nice outside today. You want to take this outside? Most of the time, a guy will say yes, because part of what we talked about being in a room he's not familiar with. But the other thing is, we talk about women bond face to face and men shoulder to shoulder. Get him out walking around. It'll help him focus more of his thoughts without feeling like he's being stared at or whatever. And the other thing is, exercise is good. Being outside is good. Fresh air is good. Vitamin D is good from the sun. So get him up, offer to go out and walk and talk. And you might see them start to open up a little bit because they'll feel more comfortable and they'll start to let their guard down. The other thing is acknowledge difficult situations. Don't dance around it. Don't try to avoid it. They're there for a purpose. Acknowledge the difficult situations. Say the difficult thing. Look, here's a couple of examples. Look, I know it's hard to think about being a parent right now. It's okay to say that. The guy's abortion minded. You think, I don't want to say the wrong thing and tip him the wrong way in the scales. I understand that. But it's okay to say, I know it's hard to think about being a parent. I get it. If somebody's experienced abortion loss, I know it's difficult to lose a child. It's okay. You're directly addressing the issue and you're giving validity to what he may be thinking or may be feeling. Maybe nobody said to him, maybe the only people he's talked to have said either, oh man, she's got to have an abortion, or you got to man up. Nobody's acknowledged where he's at the moment. So again, I know it's hard to think about being a parent right now. Let's talk about that a little bit. Giving him that validity will encourage him to open up and talk, hopefully. The other thing is ask twice. Most men's knee-jerk reaction to how you doing is I'm fine or I'm good. So ask twice. No, really, how are you? Or how you really doing today? There was a guy I went to church with for years. He's passed on now. Older guy, very kind soul. And every Sunday, every man's hand he squeezed, he said, how you doing? And if you said I'm fine or I'm good or okay, he would immediately follow that up with, oh, really though? How you doing? What he was communicating in a very direct way, without a lot of fanfare, without a lot of whatever hubbub, was, no, really, man, I really want to know how you're doing. I started employing that when I talked to men about 15 years ago. And I'm not talking about just in recovery situations. I'm talking about in general. Wednesday nights, big taco night here in the town I live in at a restaurant, and a bunch of us go and eat tacos. Our male server last week walking up to the table, flustered and scattered looking, and I said, hey, how you doing today, brother? He said, I'm fine. I said, no, really, how are you? And you could see the weight just come out of his chest. His chest loosened, his shoulders dropped a little bit, and he said, man, I'm just tired. Busy day? No, man, I'm just tired. Anyway, after tacos and whatever, I ended up sitting down with this guy at the bar on the other side of the restaurant. And we talked for about 30 minutes. It wasn't anything dramatic. It wasn't this huge thing like I need to share about connecting to mental health or whatever. He's just a guy working two jobs who needed to have someone ask him, really, how is he doing? And someone to really care about the answer. It wasn't anything dramatic. I'm not a therapist. I don't have special training. I was just a guy who, for 25 minutes or so, cared about what he was doing and what he was going through. He just needed to talk about it. But to get to that conversation, I had to ask him twice. And so I did. Look, it all boils down to something we've mentioned many times in this space: be open, be authentic, be honest, and understand that the first response is that the man doesn't trust you. What I want to lean on here for a minute is the 4x4 method. We've talked about it here before. I want to mention it again. The 4x4 method of engagement is something I learned in sales. When we talk about sales, we talk about finding the client's pain point. What is making him or her sell, or what is making him or her buy? And to do that, 4 questions wide and 4 deep, meaning each question wide leads to another question down. Now, some of you are thinking right now, what are the questions? The answer is, I don't know. It depends. And the reason it depends is because it depends on the guy you're talking to. You have to listen to him to know what the next question is. So in the 4x4 method of engagement, we ask the questions like we talked about in the 5 steps above. We let the answer to that question inform the next question. We let the answer to that question inform the next question. You see how it's a formula, it's a method, but it can't be scripted, right? If a man sees you sitting there reading off a clipboard and writing down his answers, you're done. You lost him. So we ask the questions and we wait for the answer, and we let that answer inform the next question. In that methodology, within a matter of minutes, and I'm talking 3 to 6 minutes, 7 minutes, you can find out some of the deepest stuff about what a man's dealing with. And I've mentioned this before, most men present anger, right? Earlier in the session, we talked about the acting out behaviors. Below that anger, y'all, usually is fear. And below that fear is a real thing. So I asked my 4 questions wide, my 4 deep, to get to that real thing. I don't know how to really help him, how to meet him where he's at, unless I find out what's really going on with him. And to do that, I can't make assumptions. So let's recap. We've talked about men and mental health. We talked about the high suicide rate among men, especially compared to women. We've talked about how men often feel mislabeled by healthcare providers and that providers truly underestimate their needs. We talked about men's perception of mental health care. We shared studies about how men are far less likely to seek mental health care than women. We talked about a bit about the why behind that. And we talked about the stigmas facing men in mental health care. We also talked about the myth of toxic masculinity and how that mislabeling, the degradation of masculinity as a good thing, is what informs bad mental health counseling for men and mental health pathways for men. And finally, we talked about messaging. We talked about reframing therapy as an opportunity for growth and strength instead of healing sickness. Talked about marketing and packaging. And we looked at examples of groups that serve men and they do it in a manly way. And we concluded with a few suggestions on making the most of the few minutes you have with men. Why men aren't coming through our doors and receiving healing is because of a lot of these things. And I think it's really important to note here that all the stuff I shared about men and masculine stuff and masculinity and all that kind of thing, men do talk about their feelings. But to get in that room, that inner room, you have to take a different path than often you do with women. So with that, we will open the floor to questions.
What do you think about asking a guy on a scale from 1 to 10, 1 being not so good, 10 being great, with a follow-up question, tell me about it? Do you think that would be an effective way to get a guy to open up about his feelings?
Yes, I think that can work. But I think the follow-up question is hugely important. So I'm glad you mentioned that. To just say, how you feeling on a scale of 1 to 10, a guy will check whatever box he checks, right? But getting them to talk about it. That has to be the goal. Getting them to expand a little bit and share, okay, what does that mean? I feel I'm an 8. My doctor asked me this morning, what's your pain on a scale of 1 to 10? I'm like, I don't know, 6.5. She immediately said, okay, tell me about that. Yeah, that's a great way to do it. If you scale it, because guys dig scales, follow it up, figure out how they got where they to their answer.
On messaging to men, how do we change it up? She says she knows not all pink flowers and fluff like they use in women's ministry, but do you have some more examples on how they can change up the messaging?
Yeah, so some of the examples I shared, speaking in the ways that men hear things that have to do with battle. The examples I used, every one of them talked about rising to the challenge. That kind of verbiage speaks to men. As far as colors, I don't know. For me, most of the stuff I see, it's either real earthy stuff, greens and browns and tans and blues and stuff like that, or it's really bold stuff. That Men Therapy online group I mentioned, it was reds and blacks and like old castles. It looked like some out of Lord of the Rings. Maybe you don't go that extreme. I don't know, but I would say consult men in your group. I would say message me. I can share any of the links I've got. I can share some of the literature that I picked up at men's conferences. But if you have a man on staff, if you have a male volunteer there, and you're looking at different opportunities, ask him. Number one, he'll love the fact that you ask. Does this resonate with you? I'm on a staff of 9 women, and I get asked that all the time about men's stuff. Does this resonate with you? It does. Okay, and then why? Do like a whole session just role playing it.
Everybody loves that.
So a good example: guy walks into your center, and let's say I'm the guy greeting him, and he walks in, and I say, "Hi, my name's Greg. I'm whoever I am at the center. Nice to meet you." And he says, "Oh, hi, my name's Bob. Bob, what brings you in today?" My girlfriend is pregnant, and she's in there talking to some woman, and I think they're doing some kind of thing. Well, yeah, like they're doing an ultrasound. Yeah, yeah, that's what they're doing. Oh, okay, cool. You want to come over and sit down? Yeah, but you know what? It's really nice out. You want to go outside? We just go walk around a minute. He says yes or no, right? We sit down. He goes walking outside. This thing with your girlfriend. Did you guys plan to get pregnant? Now he's in a pregnancy resource center. I'm pretty sure he didn't plan on it. I'm going to ask him anyway. Why? Not because I need the answer, because I need him to say the next thing. So I asked him, so did you guys plan on getting pregnant? No, nope, had no idea. We've been dating 5 months. I didn't even know. I thought we were being careful. And so, no, we had no idea. Oh, okay. You guys been together 5 months? Yeah, yeah. We just been dating 5 months. I've done nine. And you're going to get that. And I'm trying to recreate an amalgamation of guys I've talked to. So that's why so what have I found out so far? His name's Bob. He's been together 5 months with his girlfriend. They didn't plan on getting pregnant, and she said that they're getting the ultrasound. Okay, so now I know. So, what do you think about all this? What? She's pregnant. What are your thoughts on that? Oh, I don't know, man. It's really her decision. You're right. Legally, it's her decision. But what do you think about it? I don't know, man. Yeah, you don't have any thoughts at all on it? I don't know anything about being a dad. I work part time. I don't even think I can afford a family. Oh, you you had a dad, right? Yeah, but we weren't super close. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Have you talked to your dad about it? No, we don't have that kind of relationship. And I could go on and on, but every little question is just a little question. For those of you that are into sailing, I'm just adjusting my sail just a wee bit, trying to get him to say the next thing. What's the next thing? I found out he hadn't been with his girlfriend very long. She's pregnant. They didn't plan on it. He's not sure if he wants it. He thinks he doesn't have a decision in the thing. He's not close to his dad, and he's not sure he's going to be a dad, and he's not sure he's going to be a good dad because he's not close to his dad. And how long did that take him? 90 seconds?
After an initial talk, he's been providing Keys to Hope and Healing booklets with his contact information. It hasn't worked for any follow-up. And now thinking after hearing you talk today, is this a way of saying, take the book and see ya?
No. Good question, but no. It's not take the book and see ya. You can only do what you can do. if you're engaged in a conversation with a man and you hand him a copy of Keys to Open Healing or whatever else, and you don't exchange contact information, in other words, you just give him information to contact you, what I've come to the conclusion of is that when I do that, I am doing the best I can to be open, honest, and authentic and provide the opportunity to open the door for connection. If they don't come back around, it doesn't mean success or failure. It doesn't mean it worked or it didn't. We don't know. What we know is that we did what we could do. Now, if you exchange contact information, then yeah, it's absolutely okay to follow up. I spoke late February this year, and the guy that I initially spoke to there, we did exchange contact information and Keys to Open Healing, which he was all excited about. And we are just now scheduled to start going through it one-on-one next week. So if that helps, you keep putting out there what you put out there, brother, and it'll come back to you when it's supposed to come back to you.